morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning? Good, good. Thank you, Kevin. If you don't know Kevin, he and his family are here to plant a church over in the Westminster, Broomfield area. And so they are spending some time with us, doing a residency. And just thank you for leading us in that time of prayer and modeling that for us as a church. So I just want to encourage you to be praying for Kevin, his wife Bridget, and their 3 kids. Church planting is not easy, as all of you know, especially those of you who set up and tear down, you especially know. And so be praying for them. And also, I would encourage you to be praying. Some of you who maybe live more over in that direction, God may be calling you to go help be a part of their church plant. And if he is calling you to do that, while we will miss you and love you, we will happily send you to be a part of what God is doing in Kevin and Bridget and their church. So you'll be hearing more about that in a few weeks and the months to come. We finished our series last week, but one of our themes for Church 8025 is we want to be devoted followers of Jesus. And so a series that we have done for really over a year is the life of Jesus, because in order for us to follow Jesus, we need to see how Jesus lived his life. And so this is something we come back to often. We will always come back to this often. And for this first year or so, we have always come back to it in the book of Luke. And so that's where we're going to be today. It's in Luke chapter 14. That is in your New Testament. Luke was a physician who was hired to research the things of Jesus, the things of the disciples, the things of the crucifixion and the resurrection for a wealthy man. And he researched it all and put this letter together to the person who paid him to show him what he had discovered, what he had found out. And it's one of what we call the Gospels, the accounts of Jesus' life and his ministry here. And so we'll be in Luke 14. It'll be on the screen as well. If you don't have a Bible. If you don't have a Bible, we have some on the table back there. That's our gift to you. We'd love for you to take one of those before you leave today. So in this chapter specifically, and it's in other chapters too, but specifically in this, there's a statement that's made. And I call it an if-then statement. And what I mean by that is, and you've probably made these statements as well, something like this. If I eat healthier and work out, then I will lose weight. Right? I'll get in better shape. If I drive too fast too often, then I will get a ticket or have a wreck. There's an if statement, and then there's a then statement. If something happens, if I do something, if, and then there is an end. It's then. There's one of the most popular ones is, if I wash my car today, then it will. Yeah, you know this. You've all done this. That's why my 2011 Honda Odyssey doesn't get washed unless it rains. It's an if-then statement. And those we know are true. Like, we know those things will happen. There's some if-then statements that we're just absolutely sure about. But then there's some others that are if-then statements that really bring up more questions than they do answers, right? If I take this job, then we're not really sure. We have some ideas, we have some guesses, but we're not sure. We're kind of asking that question. If I move from here to there, then, we don't know. We know what we'd like to happen, but we're not positive. If I vote for this candidate, then, and we don't know, because what they said probably isn't going to happen. We're not sure. It's an if-then question that we don't have the answers to, unlike the previous ones where we know what's true. We just don't always feel like we know the outcome. I remember when I was a kid, a few of you may have heard this story before, but when I was a kid, this is one of the first times I can remember this if-then moment. And I was in the living room in Kentucky with my sister, who's about 2 years older than me. We were both on the floor in our living room, and she was playing with her Barbie dolls, really childish things. And I was waging war with my G.I. Joes. So she's playing Barbie. I'm really trying to save humanity with my G.I. Joes. And I'm setting them up for the battle that was about to take place, and it was a very intense moment. The freedom of mankind, I felt, was hanging in the balance. And as I'm in the middle of playing, I'm waging war with these G.I. Joes, my sister reaches over and grabs really one of my key leaders in my G.I. Joe army and brings him over to Barbie to introduce them into really an unhealthy, disproportional, size-wise dating relationship. And listen, I get that Ken is not man enough, but I'm waging a war, okay? When G.I. Joe comes home from war, maybe something can happen, maybe. although he only comes up to her knees, you know? And so I can't lose this man, so I do the only thing that I think any of us in here, any reasonable person in this room would do in that moment of war. I slapped her in the face. I was a kid, okay? This is not, it's not last week. And I got to be honest with you, it was very effective. It worked. She gave me my G.I. Joe back. So I could go back to waging war there in my living room. But on the couch was a gentleman known as my father, who was not a man of many words, but every now and then he spoke, and this was one of those occasions, and he apparently had seen the whole thing play out, and he said to me, here's the statement, son, you know you're in trouble when they don't even use your name. Like, I'm not sure I want to use the name I gave you, just son. Son, if you ever hit your sister again. And he stopped. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking what I was thinking. What? Will I get a bigger allowance? Like, have you been waiting for somebody to do that because she's kind of mean? Like, are we going to celebrate? Are you going to be like, hey, you learned your lesson? Like, what's the end of this statement? Please fill this in. But he does not fill this in. And so some time goes by as she continues to play and I continue to wage war. And sure enough, I think his statement had empowered her, and she reaches over and takes a different G.I. Joe. Now, if you know anything about me, I can kind of push the limits sometimes. I'm not saying it's a good quality I have. It's just one I have. And so I looked at my dad square in the eyes, and he looked at me square in the eyes. And he didn't say anything, and I did not say anything. And I thought to myself, I remember as a young kid thinking, well, there's only one way to find out how this plays out. And so you know what I did? I slapped my sister again. And I'll save you the gory details of what followed next. It was not a celebration with me and Big Raj, my dad. It was not a happy moment for me. But he had not finished this if-then statement. He just gave me the if part. I didn't know the then part. What was true of me as a young man was true of everyone. We don't like not knowing what happens if we do something, right? We want answers. We make decisions based on having those answers. We want to know. And being a follower of Jesus, Christianity is no different. And unfortunately, Christianity has kind of gotten this wishy-washy concept. This is what most people think of. Hey, if I give my life to Jesus, maybe you're here today and you've never said, hey, I want to follow Jesus. We are so glad that you're here. You are welcome here. But I want to help you understand that when we say, hey, I want to give my life to Jesus, it is not, I'm going to come to church. Okay? It's not, I'm going to like those horrible Facebook memes about being a follower of Jesus that are always horrible graphics and 7,000 different fonts, and that's not what this is. That is not being a follower of Jesus. Most of us live in this kind of unfortunate, murky place where being a follower of Jesus really just means this. If I'm a follower of Jesus, then I go to heaven when I die. That's what we think about it. If I say yes to Jesus, then I go to heaven when I die. Otherwise, we're not really sure what being a follower of Jesus looks like. But I would say, what if we could know? What if we could have the then statement to if I follow Jesus, then what does it look like? Whether that's before we follow Jesus or maybe you have said yes to Jesus already. Our mission here at 8025 is for people to reach people who are not just Christians, but fully devoted followers of Jesus. And so today we're going to look in Luke chapter 14 of one of the greatest if-then statements in our New Testament. And I think it gives sobering clarity to the life of a Jesus follower. Jesus tells us what we can expect if we decide to follow him. So we're going to read this together. Verse 25 is where we're going to begin, and then we're going to work our way backwards through it. So let's read in verse 25 in Luke chapter 14. It says, "Now great crowds were traveling with him," that's Jesus, "so he turned to them and said, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you wanting to build a tower doesn't first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, after he's laid the foundation and cannot finish it, all the onlookers will begin to ridicule him, saying, this man started to build and wasn't able to finish. Or, Jesus says, what king going to war against another king will not first sit down and decide if he's able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If not, while the other is still far off, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. In the same way, therefore, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. Now, let's just be honest. There's some crazy thoughts in this passage, in there. You don't read that and go, well, that just sounds wonderful. You kind of read that and go, really? Really, Jesus? So let's work backwards through this. And I think if we do, we'll get the answer to this question. The question you have, if I am a follower of Jesus, then what? If it's not just I'm a follower of Jesus so I can go to heaven, if I am a follower of Jesus, then what? So Jesus is talking to these followers. It's people who have already decided to follow him. It's disciples. It's people who are considering following him. And he says this back in verse 31, what king going to war against another king will not first sit down and decide? What king who's leading his country into war doesn't evaluate the other nation that he's going against? He doesn't look and say, hey, what's the cost of this war going to be? What's it going to cost us in money? Because war is expensive. What's it going to cost us in reputation throughout the world? What is it going to cost us in the lives of men and women who die in this war? What king, what leader would jump into a war without considering the costs at all? I have been to war and I have seen battle planning. It is not something that is taken lightly. There is a weight to this decision. There is a heaviness to this decision. There's significance. There's even a sense of finality. Hey, if I make this decision, there is no going back. If we go to war, we have gone to war. We can never not do that. In other words, Jesus is saying this king would not be flippant about war. Because to commit to war is not a casual commitment. It is not the equivalent of, in ninth grade, in 10th grade, and 11th grade, a young lady, a young man catches your eye, and you kind of say, hey, we're just going to hang out and see where this goes. If it turns into something great, if not, that's okay. Jesus is like, no. That's not the example I'm using. When you decide to go to war, you have weighed the cost. And once a king commits, he's committed. If the cost is too great, he would say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to send somebody out, and we're going to have peace instead because the cost is too much. The commitment is a big deal. Or what about the example he gives us in verse 28? He says this, for which of you wanting to build a tower doesn't first sit down and calculate the cost to see if you have enough to complete it? So the war illustration for those at that time and for us today may be a little bit tough. I don't think there's any kings in here. We're not trying to have an uprising. It's Thornton against Broomfield. Let's go. Get your tools out of the shed. Like we're not doing that. Okay, I get it. That one may be tough for us to understand. But this is so important. Jesus is like, hey, let me bring it down a little bit. Okay, none of you are kings here. Let me give you another example that may be more relatable. He says, who starts building something without first seeing if they can actually afford to finish it? When Dale and I got out of the military and we were moving to Georgia, we drove around and we looked at so many houses. And I remember there were two houses in particular that were pretty large houses that our real estate agent took us to, and you could just go walk through them because they weren't finished yet. They were like 80% finished. I mean, they were really nice houses. They were expensive houses. And she's like, you could get a great deal on this, It's been sitting empty for 3 years, and there's still things to be finished. And I remember thinking two things. One, I don't have the money to finish this house. Do you see the size? If that person didn't have the money, I don't have the money. And then two, I remember laughing at the person who started building it and was like, you know what? We don't have any more money. Like, who does that? It's like almost done. Like, it's beautiful. I can just picture him driving by and be like, honey, we almost lived in this house. It was almost our dream house, who does that? And before you judge me, Jesus said that's going to happen to you if you start building something and don't finish it. People are going to make fun. What's really going to cost you to build something. You've done that. You've built a house. You've moved somewhere. And you've stopped and said, hey, I need to run the numbers on this. I need to know what it's going to cost me before I do this. And sometimes sometimes you know the cost, right? You know exactly, hey, this part of building is going to cost this. But then there's always that uncertainty, right? There's always, hey, we need to set some money aside for the things that we didn't know about, the things we didn't think about, the things that come up along the way. There's two costs. There's the known cost, and there's the unknown cost when you build something. And you plan for both. You plan for both. You set money aside for both. And as you do that, you say, hey, I'm willing to see it through. I think we can do this. Even if something unexpected comes up, I can do this. But sometimes we get distracted in this, right? If you've ever bought a house, if you've ever moved, and you get distracted by the fun parts, right? Hey, we can pick out new furniture, we can paint things, there's some improvements we can make, it's gonna be great, right? But then you get together and you sit down and you go, well, here's how much that paint's gonna cost, and here's how much those new cabinets are gonna cost, and here's how much the backyard renovation, and all of a sudden you go, you know what, we may not actually be able to do this. Like, those are good dreams, but as we count the cost, this is something that we can't do. And Jesus would say to all of us, just like that, when it comes to following Jesus, you need to stop and count the cost. These stories that Jesus gives, he's really just taking a moment. He's taking the people who have started following him, kind of, people who are thinking about it, and he's saying, hey, I just want you to evaluate this decision that you're considering. I want you to evaluate this decision you have just made. And here's why he does it, is because Jesus does not take a decision to follow him lightly. I think, unfortunately, and let me apologize for pastors and churches who have said, hey, your decision to follow Jesus means attend church. That is not what following Jesus means. There's certainly a call to community, to gathering with brothers and sisters, but that is not the call that Jesus gives to following him. In fact, this is one of the most extreme teachings that he has. It's one of the most difficult teachings, I think, that Jesus has in all the New Testament. He places such a high level on understanding what following Jesus means. He talks about it over and over and over again, that we need to understand it may cost us if we're going to be a devoted follower of Jesus. We as a staff sat down and went through the New Testament and kind of looked at what marks of a follower of Jesus are. And we came up with these that we saw Jesus over and over again. He said it's to know Jesus, to obey Jesus, to be willing to suffer for Jesus. We don't teach a lot on that, do we? To love others because of Jesus, and to teach others to follow Jesus. And when you look in those settings that Jesus is sharing those things, hey, here's what it means to follow me, there is almost always a cost to it. There's almost always a cost to it. And then Jesus gets, really crazy in his teaching. Look in verse 26. It says this: if anyone comes to me and does not, what's that next word? We're going to try it again, all right? Here we go. I know school's out for the summer, but you're grown-ups, so. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own who? Father and mother. Wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. That's a crazy teaching, right? Like, you're not signing up for a lot of things. It's like, yeah, you want this car? Yeah, and we need $5,000 down. We need you to hate your wife and mom and dad, and you're good to go. You can take it home today. Like, nobody's asking you to do that. This is the teaching that Jesus has. Jesus is adamant. This is why he shares this statement. It's because he's adamant that we understand what it means to be his disciple. He doesn't want us to miss it. We can't claim to be a follower of Jesus unless we are willing to reject everything else in our life, to do away with everything else in our life, if that's what we're called to do. And this is where parents get mad at me. I've got a line of parents who don't like me because I say, listen, if your son is saying this is what God is calling me to do, if your daughter is saying this is what God is calling me to do, then you should be their biggest cheerleader. Because if you're telling them, hey, you need to choose between God and me, guess who Jesus told them to choose? It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. It's not just our parents, though, that we need to reject. It's not just our wife and kids. He goes on and says, you need to be willing to die to yourself. This is not just a get rid of everybody in your life thing that Jesus is saying. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you need to be willing to get rid of yourself. Jesus is not actually here teaching you to hate. Okay, don't take that. Don't leave here saying, hey, Jesus is telling me I should hate the people around me, okay? That's not what Jesus is saying. It's not consistent with who he is. Jesus teaches us to love people. In fact, Jesus is love. But the way he worded this would have been a normal phrase in this day that showed two extremes. That's what he was going for. He wasn't saying actually, hey, hate your mom and dad, hate your wife. That's how you're going to have a good marriage. No, he's showing two extremes that love for him should make all other love look weak in comparison. Right? That even your love for your spouse should look weak in comparison to your love and commitment to Jesus. Your love should be so great as a follower that when it comes down to it, that you would choose to follow Jesus over everyone else and everything else, even your family. That's what Jesus says. If it comes down to this, you need to choose me. I think one thing Jesus asked me to choose him, it's one thing that he asked me to choose him over my family instead of somebody else's family, right? I think he was specific when he said your family, because if it was somebody else's family, that'd be easy. Right, let me give you some examples. If Jesus said, hey, Michael, I need you to decide right now, are you going to love me or are you going to love this family here? I'd be like, Jesus, I'm in, man. Anybody do this family photo back in the day, matching shirts? It's not difficult for me to choose Jesus over this family. That's easy. Or what about this family? Jesus said, Michael, it's me or the cell phone family, okay? And the pager family. And he's got two cell phones. I'd be like, Jesus, why are you even asking that? This is easy. What if Jesus said, Michael, hey, you got to choose me or you got to choose the Kung Fu family? Now, I wouldn't tell them because they got swords in their hand, but I'd be like, hey, you're out. Sorry, you're not my family. What about this family? If Jesus asked me to choose him or Star Trek family? This is amazing. I apologize if any of you are, Star Trek fans in here, but I would laugh at you if you took a family picture like that too. So just going to be honest with you. Or what if Jesus said, listen, Michael, this one's going to be... I know the picture, that's why I laugh. You got to choose me or this family. And I said, but Jesus, everybody knows the family that smokes together stays together. This is not a tough decision. It's just not. And I apologize if any of you took a family photo like this back in the day. But what were you thinking, okay? I don't know how else to say it. This is not a difficult decision to me at all. But if Jesus says, Michael, are you willing to follow me over this family? Well, that's a tough decision. Because you need to know I'd kill you for my son and daughter if I had to. For my wife. You need to know my love for them is deep. Like I love you as your pastor and the people in this church. But if I have to choose my wife and my kids over you, you better find a new friend. And I would expect you to say the same thing about your family. Like I love them deeply. My kids don't know this yet, but there's nothing in this world that I wouldn't sacrifice for them. My wife thinks she knows, but she doesn't know. There's nothing in this world that I would not sacrifice for her. And this becomes more difficult when Jesus says, Michael, you need to love me. You need to be committed to me more than your family. We don't wake up and go, oh, that's no problem. Oh, that's easy. There's weight to that. I love my family deeply. You, I imagine, love your family deeply. This is no easy thing. But I have to think, I have to be honest, I have to listen to Jesus. And as much as I love my family, and it is a lot, my family has not brought me from death to life. My family has not redeemed my brokenness. My family has not forgiven my sins. My family is not the reason I have eternal hope. Jesus Christ is. And so in choosing to love Jesus above them, I can actually love them better. But that's not an easy decision. And I get it, this is hard. the question you may be asking, maybe you're a follower of Jesus, maybe you're not, and maybe the question you have, and I understand this question is, well, why do we have to choose? Like what kind of God is that if he's saying, hey, you got to choose me over family? Can't we just love Jesus and our family the same? Why one or the other? Let me try to explain this to you, why an equal love of God and anything else won't work. I love my wife, Dell, with my whole heart. She knows that. She pursued me in college for years, and I finally said, okay. That may not be completely true, but anyways, we got together and got married, and I love her. But I also have a good friend in this church. I have lots of good friends, but I'm just going to use one good friend, Andy. Andy runs our slides back there and does an amazing job. Let's everybody cheer for Andy. I knew that would embarrass him, so that's why I wanted to do that. But Andy's a really good friend of mine, and I'm sure that if I told Andy, hey, Andy, man, I love you. You're a good friend. I love you, man. Like, he would be honored in that. I'm sure that would mean a lot to him. And if I said, listen, Andy, I want you to know, like, we've hung out more and more, and as a friend, like, I love you as much as I love my wife. I care about you, and I'm as committed to you as much as I love my wife. Would he feel more loved? Yeah, he'd be like, dang, Talia's not sure I'm ready for that step, but okay. But he would certainly feel more loved, right? I mean, like, that's a big thing. Now, if I go to Dale and I say, hey, listen, baby, I want you to know, I don't love you any less than I loved you yesterday, okay? I want you to know that. I don't love you any less than I loved you yesterday. But Andy's been a really good friend. And I think I love him as much as I love you. My love for him equals my love for you. Now, tell me, would Dale feel loved more or less in that moment? Yeah, if you know her, you're like, Michael, don't ever say that, okay? Why? Well, because by the nature of our relationship, she should be who I love most. Because of the nature of our relationship, even just loving someone else equally diminishes my love for her, right? Even just saying, listen, I don't love you any less. I'm still going to do everything I've committed to you. I just love something else as equal to you. She would say, honey, that's just not going to work for me. Okay? That's just not going to work. It doesn't give the respect to her that she deserves. It doesn't give her the place in life, my life, that she deserves. It doesn't show her the love that she deserves. And we need to remember this, is that to love anyone equal to Jesus is to love Jesus less than he should be loved. To love your mom and dad and son and daughter and husband and wife equally to how you love Jesus is to love him less than he should be loved. And this is a decision that we have to make. Because the decision to follow Jesus is not a casual commitment. It's not something that we make flippantly. We can be easily associated with many things. We can be easily associated with sports teams. I went to the Rockies and Braves games last night, and on the way in, we were laughing at how many people were like in Dodgers jerseys and Chicago Bulls jerseys. And I was like, those teams aren't even here, right? You know, it's just kind of a cat. Oh yeah, I'm just pull this out of the closet and wear it to the game. We can be casually committed to the gym. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but you know, some of you have been paying a gym membership for years now, and you're like, I'm not sure is that gym still open? That's a casual commitment. You can be casually committed to a school. Listen, you can be casually committed to religion. You can be casually committed to church 80-25. But it will not work in a relationship with Jesus. It won't. Jesus calls us to come and die to ourselves. He calls you to die to yourself. We have to be set apart from those around us, and that is done not through a casual commitment. Here's what I want you to remember today, is a casual commitment is not a commitment at all. You cannot be casually committed to Jesus. If that is your commitment, it is not really a commitment at all. And to these people, to us, that Jesus is telling them to choose their family over, to these people on that day, that's a real issue. Because at that time, it was not acceptable, it wasn't cool, it wasn't popular to be a follower of Jesus. And so if they said, hey, I'm going to choose to follow you, Jesus, they were also saying, I understand that when I walk back in my house and tell them that I am a follower of Jesus, my family may very well want nothing to do with me. And we don't understand that, right? Very few of us will ever go say, hey, Mom, Dad, honey, I gave my life to Jesus. And they're going to be like, hey, pack your stuff and get out. We're not going to experience that, but these people understood, hey, if I'm going to commit my life to Jesus, it may cost my family. I may have to do it alone. And for us, choosing a family is easier, right? Choosing a job over Jesus is easier. Choosing friends and relationship. Choosing convenience. Man, this is just going to be too tough. I can kind of be casually committed and have more convenience in my life. If I'm just casually committed, I can have more acceptance in my life. You can do all of those things and be a Christian. You cannot do those things and be a devoted follower of Jesus. You can casually follow Jesus in the way that, hey, I know he died for my sins and that he rose again and I'm going to go to heaven one day. But Jesus says you cannot actually follow me without denying yourself. Because here's why. We know this is true. The true call of Jesus is a call to self-denial, not a call to self-fulfillment. Right, today we are taught over and over, what makes you happy? What's going to get you ahead? What's going to be most convenient for you? What's going to be easiest for you? How can you fulfill your self-desires most? And Jesus is like, man, that is not how you follow me. To follow me, it is a call to self-denial. Your first question is not, what do I want? The first question is, what does Jesus say? The first question is not, what is most convenient? The first question is, where is Jesus leading me? There's no such thing as casual devotion to Jesus. This is why twice in these 8 verses, he clearly says what it requires to be his follower. Look in verse 27. It says, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me, what? Can kind of be my disciple? Can be my disciple on Sundays? It's okay. No, he says, if you're not willing to do this, you cannot be my disciple. Now listen, we need to understand this before we move on. Jesus doesn't say that you need to carry Jesus' cross. He has already carried that cross. In fact, you can't do that, right? He has carried the cross of our sin, the weight of our sin. He's already done that. He's not saying that you need to do that. He is saying that as a disciple, you will have a cross to carry and you need to be willing to do that, whatever it may be. And it can be different for each of us. It can be different for each of us. Some of you, your family are followers of Jesus and they support you. That's not your cross. But in your workplace, following Jesus may very well cost you a promotion. It may very well cost you an opportunity. Maybe that is your cross. I can be devoted and follow Jesus, or I can casually commit my life to him so that I can move up in the company, right? Jesus says, no, you can't. You got to follow me. Maybe your family is angry at God and they want nothing to do with him. And you following Jesus may cause them to be angry with you. That might be your cross. But there's just no wiggle room here. Jesus says you've got to carry that cross if you want to be my disciple. Otherwise, you can be a Christian. Otherwise, you can be a church attender. But if you want to be a devoted follower of me, you have to carry that cross. And I don't know what your cross is. It looks differently than mine. I only know that Jesus is clear. If you want to be committed to him, if you want to follow him, you have to do it no matter the cost. He says, again, maybe in a clearer way, in verse 33, he says this. In the same way, therefore, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions, here it is again, cannot be my disciple. Now, Jesus did not say this and then everybody got up and went and gave everything away. That's not what he's teaching, okay? Don't hear me say that. What he's saying is, if I am not your priority, then you cannot follow me. If you're not willing to give away your possessions, then you cannot follow me. The problem we have with this is we want to follow Jesus and not give up anything. Let's just be honest. We want to follow Jesus and not give up anything. That's how we live our lives. But Jesus says you've got to be willing to give up everything. He has to be the priority. Listen, I hope none of you ever lose the promotion. I hope you get promoted to the CEO of your company. I hope none of you have to choose a different school. I hope none of you have to give up a relationship. But Jesus is saying you need to be willing to, if that's what it comes to follow me. And I want you to know, it's not like he's trying to pull a quick one on you, okay? He's not trying to, slide this one in without you noticing. In fact, he starts this very passage as we look back in verse 25. Now, great crowds were traveling with him, so he turned and said to them. In other words, Jesus notices, hey, there's a lot of people starting to follow me. I'm going to tell them what that really means, right? He doesn't gather everybody, get them all fired up about following him, and then it's like, oh yeah, one more thing. I hate your mom and dad. Okay, let's go eat lunch. Like, that's not how he does it. He begins with this. This is not a secret. This is not, if you've signed up for the timeshare before, and they're like, yeah, hey, here's these points, you get the points, you're excited about it. Then 9 months later, you call, you're looking to go to the beach, and they're like, oh, sorry, Mr. Talley, those points, we have a 400 square foot cabin in Kansas you can use with those. And you're like, what? It's not, where is that? And they're like, yeah, it's in the small print there. It's not what Jesus is doing here. It's not an I got you. It's not the fine print. In fact, this is the bold print. This is the headline to what he's about to teach. He turns to the entire crowd and says to them, I know that you want to know the answer to if you follow me. Like, you've started gathering and you're thinking, if we follow him, what does that mean? And here's what it means. You must be willing to give up everything. You must be willing to be fully committed to me. Let me ask you if you think after saying that the number of people following him was more or less. I'm sure that crowd got smaller that day. I'm sure there were some people in the back that just kind of, I didn't even mean to be in this crowd. I thought this was the line for the grocery store, like they just slipped right on out. And Jesus doesn't call them out. Jesus says, hey, you in the back, I see you leaving. Jesus says, here's what it means to follow me. You think to follow Jesus will be easy. That's what we think, right? This is kind of cool. Some other people are doing it. But the reality is that a casual commitment is no commitment at all. It's not. And I get the question. I understand if you're thinking, Michael, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't live up to this standard. Like, what if I can't? I understand how you have that feeling after Jesus lays out the commitment, the qualities of a committed follower of Jesus. But I want to encourage us not to just take part of what Jesus teaches without taking the rest of what Jesus teaches. The good news of coming to Jesus, the good news of living in a relationship with him, it's not fix yourself and then you can follow me. That's not what he's saying here. He's not saying, hey, when you've got everything squared away, when your life is perfect, then you can follow him. That's not what he's saying. In fact, he's saying this, and we need to remember this. It's not the correction of our faults that allow us to be committed to Jesus. It's our commitment to Jesus that allows our faults to be corrected. He's not saying, get your act together and then you can follow me. He's saying, follow me. Come to me as you are. Surrender yourself to me and I will change you. I just want you to understand it may cost you some things in this world. But Jesus is so adamant about this because Jesus knows what we've got to know is that if we commit to him, if we live to him, if we truly are devoted followers to him, our lives will be better. That is the way he designed us to live. And while at the initial output it feels like, I don't know if I can count this cost, Jesus is saying, you can. Through me, through my power, through the Holy Spirit living in you, you can. And if you will see that it is worth it. He's not saying, go tell all your friends, hey, sorry, pastor said I got to hate you, so I don't know if we can still get coffee. You know, that's not what he's saying. He's not saying get things perfect and come to me. He's saying come to me as you are. So does he call you to come and die? Yeah. But listen to this. He calls you to come and die with him so that you can also live with him. Right? Jesus is not the story of death. Jesus is the story of life. And he knows that if you will die to yourself, that you can become fully alive in him. It's truly a great and awesome calling that our Creator, that our God has given to us to follow him and be committed to him. And listen, this is not a burdensome calling. This isn't made for you to leave here and think, I just don't know if I can do this. No. It's a calling that frees us. It frees us because when we're committed to being a disciple of Jesus, we no longer have to make decisions in our own strength. We no longer have to rely on ourselves. The weight of our life is no longer on our ability. I don't know about you, but I make dumb decisions. I don't know about you, but pressure gets to me. I don't know about you, but I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The call to follow Jesus, this level of commitment, we are free in how we know we should live, and that we're forgiven for how we live, and that God is in control. So if you're considering following Jesus, maybe you've already decided to follow Jesus, but you would say, hey, my commitment has probably been a little more casual than what Jesus is saying here. I would challenge you this morning to consider, to think about, what does following Jesus, what does that commitment really mean? I would challenge you to think, what does your cross look like? What kind of commitment have you or are you prepared to make to Jesus? Because it simply cannot be a casual one. Because a casual commitment is no commitment at all. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions to talk about this afternoon. Here's the first one. Is your commitment a casual one? Like, let's just start there. Right? Be honest with yourself. Man, is this just a casual? I'm checking some boxes. I attend church sometimes. Is it a casual commitment? And here's the second question. What would it look like in your life if you were serious about your commitment? I don't know the answer to that for all of you. I don't know what that means for each one of you. But it's a question that if you've surrendered your life to Jesus, you should think about. What if I was really serious about following Jesus? Because it's not me who said, hey, you can't be casually committed to Jesus. That's what Jesus said. And I don't know about you, but I think for me, I think for you, if we listened to Jesus' teaching there and said, hey, I want to know you the way I'm supposed to know you, we would say, I want to be fully committed to you. Let's pray together. God, we love you. We thank you that you sent your son, Jesus. God, we thank you for this difficult teaching that he gives us that applies to us right where we are here in Thornton, Colorado. And God, I pray that all of us would understand that we cannot be casually committed to Jesus. That we can't experience life in him the way that he wants, the fullness of life, the way that Jesus designed and plans for us, unless we are fully committed to him. And so I pray that you would give us the courage to do that, because it does take courage. That you would give us the confidence in who you are, that when we commit to you, you are with us. God, we love you and we thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.